Okay, so I'm gonna, yeah, glass blowing was unfamiliar to me, but also there's something about that fire that really captivated me, and so I ended up going to Hawaii and I ended up getting a degree in glass art, and ever since then I've been blowing glass, and I ended up, living in LA, and I have a studio just down the street from a museum here in Los Angeles, and yeah, I work on a variety of different projects through the studio. But over here in today's exhibition, I have a collection of glass pieces and installations that I was inspired by in the experiences that I've had as a person who has ups and downs. In my bio, I'm kind of described as a person, artist living with bipolar disorder, but I feel like that's just one aspect of me, and I'm just a person with emotion, just like any of you, and that really is kind of like the spark, the core inspiration of this exhibition.
Well, maybe we can move over to some of the work, and Kazuki, I'm going to have you why don't you stand more next to the work than me? And before we do talk about these specific pieces, maybe if you could tell everybody a little bit about what the title of the exhibition, Tomoshibi, means.
Sure. The Tomoshibi is a Japanese word for like small flame. It's like usually like if you're describing like a flame of a candle light, that's usually a Tomoshibi. It's like a small light that's like really resilient, and it's almost about to go off, but it's, it keeps itself on, and so that's that I chose as the title of the exhibition. I also wanted to talk about the color of this room too. We've kind of like talked a lot about the whole, how to kind of go about and display all the pieces, and the core inspiration of this entire room is from kind of like the darkness that I have within me. So we decided to paint the walls black, off black color.
And well, I mean, you as a glass blower too, where light's always light's critical, I think, to any artwork, but where you have glass, where you have these reflective surfaces, and how we talked about how like having the pieces against the black background and then being very dramatically lit, where sort of the shimmer of them would really, hopefully like resonate and be kind of those moments of enduring light, so to speak, kind of like the Tomoshibi.
Yeah, I definitely light is kind of like I use it as a kind of like a symbol or metaphor in different ways to kind of express the things that I've seen in my experience, and I think that I also kind of naturally get focused on things that are very opposite because of the ups and downs that I have. So whenever there's darkness, there's light. To see darkness, you have to have no light. It's all related, and it's all part of it, and so it's all of what I wanted to kind of encompass in this exhibition. So I thought the title will kind of give the taste of what the room is about.
Kazuki, maybe can you tell us a little bit about these? So we're starting at the entryway into the exhibition space, and maybe you could talk about these three pieces and just tell folks a little bit maybe about what they mean, and also you have such a beautiful the glasswork, and especially like with the details of the feathers and everything on them, kind of how you created the pieces technically as well.
Thank you. Yes, I've been making glass, and I really like that. Historically, it's been used as a medium to contain something. Like it's a fragile material to choose. So I really like using glass to kind of speak about this subject matter. And these pieces are taken shape as an oversized like goblet almost, and then they're adorned with different elements of protection that I think, I think having something to protect yourself is always it's a good arsenal to have in your journey. And so these are the guardians that I've made, and they stand on top of the concrete cast pedestals that I made, and then I've been to this natural history museum, and I was super inspired by just horns, and I've always had an interest in insects as well, and so that piece is inspired by the stag beetle, things in nature as well. They have naturally they have things they have to protect themselves from danger. And when I speak about mental health through glass, I want to make something visual so that I can make something that is invisible and kind of give it my personal shape. I always love hearing feedbacks after that.
Yeah, to let it open enough that sort of everyone can have their own interpretation and bring their own stories to it as well.
Definitely, yeah. And since I've started learning English when I was kind of later in my childhood, so it was pretty normal for me to not be able to communicate with people who were in Hong Kong or people who were in Bangkok, or when I even came to University of Hawaii, I was having a really hard time reading English or writing papers in English. So I think naturally my language started incorporating elements from nature. I think it's global. Globally, I think you can kind of it means similar things, and I wanted to make it appropriate for everybody.
And Kazuki, maybe before we move on, and Andres, I don't know if you can kind of get close to this. Can you maybe tell folks at home? So part of these elements, you're blowing them; they're blown glass, and then with the feathers on this piece and all that beautiful detail that's in there. Can you tell us how you make those?
Sure. So these are made out of what's called a type of glass called soft glass, and we gather up 2,000-degree molten glass out of a furnace that stays on all throughout the year, and that's the beginning of everything. So everything starts out from a pot of glass that we cook overnight and find out bubbles. So it starts from over there, and then I use a variety of different hand tools, and I work with a bunch of amazing glass artists who breathe their air into the blowpipe and actually start shaping this form on the other end. So it's very much it's an ancient form of art and craft, and it's a very much team effort too. It almost feels like a dance when things are all kind of working together and we're working on a thing. Everybody has their part, and everybody knows, what to do next.
Yeah, and that glass blowing is kind of automatically collaborative ultimately, because like you said, you always the blowpipes are long and you can't be blowing the air into it while you're shaping the glass too. So you always have, like, everybody seems to kind of partner up, and that's really great. I imagine a really crazy, good, fun community that develops around that.
Yes. The community aspect of glass blowing is just one thing I absolutely love about this material. I get to talk to these amazing people who work with me and, who are willing to sweat with me and on a daily basis. And we craft on, we have the same goal of crafting these pieces. And when it just works, it's just really magical.
Well, maybe we could kind of step further into the gallery. Maybe before we move in there, we could talk about this work. And Kazuki, again, I'll let you kind of stand closest to the artwork.
So this piece is called Breaking the Silence 3. And I've been specifically interested in the topic of suicide prevention. And this story started when I took a trip to Japan to help a family member go, through a pretty much like a mental crisis. And I helped him through, the tough time that he needed help with. And so with this piece, I've went to a couple of places to scout out to drop the blown glass sphere. I chose to go to like a couple different places in LA, like a couple of bridges. But luckily, like a lot of the places, like all the places when I went to, the bridges were blocked off. So, people can't have easy access to, choose to end their life that way. So yeah, I ended up breaking this piece, which I, kind of glued back together. There's a hole in the back, and it's a vessel that's broken that's been repaired, but it's like, it's obviously there's a water dripping every 20 seconds or something, and it just leaks out.
It seems to be, I think we have it a little faster today than it seems to be, but probably good for the Zoom. Yeah, and then this is actually like the third iteration of this piece, because you've even done it where you've had like dozens of the craft vessels as well. And why do you feel, because there's a couple of pieces in here that are kind of iterations of prior work, and kind of why do you think you're sort of drawn to kind of going back? I mean, they're always different, but drawn to kind of going back to earlier series and kind of reshaping them.
Yeah, I think the conversation can be told in many different ways. And so I really like that about just art, creating art in general. And I think that I think I do have like a core story that really like was pivotal in my life that I would always want to continue to tell. And but I also have like this crazy amount of like shapes and forms and ideas that I want to realize. And I think that's where the same kind of conversation manifests into a different form.
You can kind of have both of those working simultaneously.
I think so. Yeah.
Great. Why don't we move into the center of the space? And actually, this is another work that has water in there as well.
Yes. This piece is, encompasses the central part of the exhibition room, and it's not just my work. A lot of people have participated in making this installation called Stopper Driven. So these paper cranes are actually individually folded, and thanks to Craft Contemporary Museum, you guys, we did a online programming where we've made a call for folded paper cranes, and a bunch of people have really kindly participated during the pandemic, and we were able to keep our hands moving, which is like a really important, really like effective way to keep your mental health kind of, one way to keep your mental health stable, steady. With that, with or without the paper crane nest that we made, I think that the piece is like so different. So I love how this piece has evolved during the time, when the museum, the exhibition was being postponed. The colorful flowers, basically, this is inspired by kind of like the moments of mania that I have. Mania is like when, it's like a time when you're, when I'm like talkative and have lots of energy, and it's also like a time where I'm not being very productive because I have like a million ideas happening at the same time, and I'm just not getting anything done. So it's also like it's like a source of inspiration. Like a mania is like a source of inspiration, but also at the same time, it's kind of like a limitation as well from me being productive and doing what I want to do. So that's what the piece is roughly about. Yeah.
And I think kind of in some of our conversations about this, it also it seems to represent acceptance for you as well, or where I think you spoke about where you got to the point where you're just like, during your manic episodes, just accepting that that's kind of who you are in those moments, or how you are in those moments, and that although you can't necessarily produce, you still get a lot of your ideas from those periods of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely like I have moments where I'm so energetic, and I have like, oh, I can do this, and I can do this, and I have grandiose ideas. And then, but yeah, definitely that can be very harmful if I don't like keep my mental health in check. And I really do see that in the small world that I have within me. And I know that, mental health, with how common it is in all cultures, I felt the need to realize it and materialize it. And so, so it's available, as a physical, it has like a physical presence.
Kazuki, can you maybe talk a little bit again about the technical aspects of working with glass as well? So the stoppers, they are separate pieces that go into the bottles, and I mean those are huge bottles. I imagine that they're probably not the easiest thing to create, and then also maybe talk a little bit about why they're filled with water as well.
Sure. So these stoppers actually are, pretty wide for how narrow the bottles are. So they won't stand up without the water in it. So that's part of why they're filled with water to kind of weigh it down, and also it creates the optical effect, which I really love about, just filling the clear glass with water. The tops actually are probably the funnest pieces to make. It uses centrifugal force to open up the glass and let the material do its natural thing. So it's very similar in a way that a lot of how nature works. And so I wanted it to have a burst of color in the middle of the room. And kind of utilize a lot of different techniques in glass blowing as well. And definitely these tall bottles are not the easiest to make.
They look like they'd be really hard to have on the end of the blowpipe, that you really have to like spin that blowpipe pretty fast to keep them from slumping.
Yes, so yeah, it's probably like to kind of visualize the weight of the pieces. Like it's easy to hold it like this, but it'd be much tougher to hold it like this from the neck. So that's what we're trying to do with the blowpipe all the time. It's connected to one spot, which is either this side of the bottle or this side of the bottle. So we do need a very physical, like help from a couple of great skilled glass blowers. So we have team of glass blowers just kind of helping me to make these bottles, which were really fun.
Okay. Well, maybe is there anything else you wanted to share about this work? Perhaps?
Yes, sure. I just wanted to mention and thank all of the people who have participated in the craft. Make your own paper, make paperweight, paper cranes, and I've received like a couple of like wonderful like messages along with all the cranes that were sent from all over the States and some from Canada. So I really want to thank everybody who participated in this project.
Yeah, and I know you did want us to, when folks are able to come and visit, along with the object information for this piece, there's a list of the people who contributed the cranes as well. And that was a really wonderful workshop that you led via Zoom a while back, and showing people how to make paper cranes. And then also Kazuki, once like everybody made their cranes, they mailed them in. You and your wife and your mom were also like making a ton of cranes as well, from what I recall. And then from there, how did you get them the different colors?
These are just actually individually hand dyed. So everybody who participated, I asked them to send me just plain white paper cranes that were folded, and we opened them up individually, and then hand dyed them, every single one of them, kind of to make it look like fallen leaves, and I wanted to make it look like a nest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, maybe we can move over to this work. I'm going to again see on the other side of you. And this piece is called Brainstorm. Oh. We'll move to the other side of it. All right, so this work that's to our right is called Brainstorm. And it's the only hanging work in the show. And maybe, again, if you could just tell everybody a bit about what it means and how you created it.
Sure. So how I created it is I have my really amazing artist, glass artist who worked for me, David. He's actually the one who made these squiggles. But all of these individual squiggles were kind of loosely inspired by Japanese calligraphy, like the vertical, like cursive writing. It kind of is like an exploded version of like a section of my diary, almost like kind of visually. And then it speaks about when I have like these obsessive thinking moments where I have like uncontrollable amount of thoughts that are just going through my head, and it feels almost like a storm. And so I wanted to kind of express that idea. And fun thing about these are they all just kind of just slide on and cast these really amazing shadow in the back. So that's one thing we worked on to get.
It is amazing how even completely clear, transparent glass, it's never transparent ultimately. There's always the glare of lighting, the shadows that it casts. And I know that was something we talked about as well, and how important the really intense like pings of light were on it for you.
Definitely, yeah. And I also wanted this room to be kind of like a scenery. So I wanted to include something that looks like a cloud, and so that's kind of what made this installation kind of, this design.
Yeah, kind of to hover in midair, so to speak.
Yes.
Okay, well, maybe we can make our way. We are kind of making our way towards the, I guess, the back part of the gallery. Maybe if we could talk about the work that's on the shelves over here. Doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay, so this piece is kind of a new form of a series of work that I've been creating, and it's called the Minimalist Series. And in this series, I use black and white, what's called a cane, which is essentially black and white lines of color in glass, and I stretch them, across the studio, and pull a ton of lines and bundle them together, or lay them down in different ways to create these complex pattern. And these are really ancient Venetian way of creating colors in glass blowing. Each one of them have layers and layers of lines that we physically pulled.
So like each each row, so to speak, or they almost become tiles, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they
together
become tiles. Yeah, and they start out as a tile, and then we warm it up on a high temperature ceramic plate, and then roll that tile basically around the blowpipe, the tip of the blowpipe, close the end, and start blowing the glass. So it's a time-consuming process, but to get to like different effects, it's a really fun way to create patterns. So these are kind of like in the shape of pebbles, almost kind of I don't know, like in the corner of your room or house or something, you keep something that's like really memorable to you. I feel like that, the relationship of things and you, and how that relates to your emotional health. I think that's kind of what the inspiration of this installation is. And there's these ideas about creating space in your living space, or mental space, and that involves a very black and white decision making. So you whether to throw away something or whether to keep something. It's a bunch of complex decisions that have to be made in order to kind of create your healthy life and room for healthy living. Yeah.
Thank you, Kazuki. With this piece, and actually with almost all of the pieces in the show, and Marcel has also been mentioning, a lot of people are asking about the work, but they're also asking about what the work is on as well, like the shelf in this case, or the concrete bases, like for your guardians. Can you talk a little bit about your decisions that went into, I guess, the structures that your glass was shown on?
Sure. So this wood cabinetry is made by my friend Jim Fishman, and we used wood called Coruscant white oak, and then walnut pins. And the pins actually, they're really like when you fit them, all this structure kind of holds itself together, and so it's very functional. And yeah, I love collaborating with other people who can make beautiful stuff that I cannot make. And then we definitely played around with different background colors because we have black and white pieces, so so that all the pieces kind of stand out, against the background.
And I know as we were talking about the show, you made a very conscious choice not to have your work on like traditional pedestals.
Yes, I wanted to make the room look like just kind of like a room, that storm, like you're looking outside the window or something like that. So yeah, I felt like the traditional like pedestals, it was actually very challenging to make all of the pieces in glass and the pieces that the glass sit on. But yeah, I'm really glad that we went with that route of not using the traditional pedestals.
You said to make it like less museum-like, so to speak, or less gallery-like, or hopefully as a vote.
Yeah, hopefully.
Great. Well, maybe we can make our way to what actually is the sort of final work, the piece that kind of ends the show. It's also by a statement that you wrote for the exhibition as well.
Yes.
Do you want to? I think maybe we'll get a little, or to the other side, maybe.
Okay. So this piece is called the Bluebird, and it's the final piece of that's in this room. So it's it's inspired by actually like a children's book that my mom used to read when I was a kid, and I actually encountered the same. Actually, I got a little bit different version of the children's book. It's in Japanese for my daughter, who's born kind of during the pandemic. But so the story is it's actually like from a French play, and in the story, the siblings who go on this journey, and they're kind of dreaming in this book that I read, but they go on a journey to find this bluebird that represents happiness, and they go and meet other characters, or they go to different places and try to search for this bluebird, but where they end up finding the bluebird is in their backyard. And so I really like that the story, and it almost felt like I kind of had the same feeling when I found something like a stability personally. Mm-hmm. I felt like all these things that were like journaling or exercising or taking medications or going to see a therapist, all of these things that are recommended to do, and I did research on to keep my mental health in check. But I felt like the answer was like a little bit closer than where I was looking. I felt like personally that's where I found my stability. I don't know what it is, but so that's where this piece is kind of how it came about.
And, can you maybe talk a little bit more too about, you're a maker, you're an artist, kind of how that factors into you also like maintaining your mental health as well?
Yeah, sure. Like I said earlier with the cranes, I think that moving your fingers and moving your body is very, very important to keep your mental health healthy. Well, it's at least one technique, one method, and please, like do everything you can to stay healthy and to stay on top of things, because once you have, once you start having depression, it really becomes I don't know, like a boundary. It's like it costs money. Depression costs money, basically, also, and it affects other people. In fact, it affects you a lot, and so it's really nice to have a strong mental health. And yeah, it's as a maker, I have the chance to kind of use my hands every day, and and have a creative outlet as well. And I also talk about myself through art, so that's also really helpful in kind of keeping my mental health. Yeah.
So that brings us to the kind of have made our way around the gallery space. So maybe we could take a few moments, we can get you sort of comfortable, and then we can move into the Q&A portion. Does that sound good? So everyone, we're just gonna take a couple minutes to get Kazuki set up, and then I'm also just gonna transition into another room to be able to also look at the chat if questions have been coming in. So maybe give us just a few minutes to do that. We should be pretty quick. And Kazuki, I don't know if you need to grab a drink of water or anything. Now's the time to do that. And then Andres, I think we'll just set Kazuki up over for Brainstorm.
All right, so I think we're back. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today, and also for your patience with technical issues as well. I think, Kazuki, can you hear me now? Are you all? Okay, excellent.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. I think, and hopefully everybody else is. So I'm. Okay, so we did talk a little bit about this already, but maybe Kazuki, Patricia has a question about. Patricia says that they were blown away by the reflections that the cranes created in the glass bottles and water. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that, or do you have anything else to share?
Sure. I think the reflection and kind of the distortion of the crane through the glass bottles are kind of extra, like, bonus things that I really didn't account for, or I kind of knew that might happen, but that's something that always like a fun thing that at the end, when the exhibition space come together and all the pieces come together, you see it finally in this scale. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have like a unlimited amount of space in my studio, and so it's always like until the very end I'm kind of like trying to guess how everything is going to look like, and it's always an exciting and thrilling moment when everything comes together. and hopefully that answered your question. Yeah. So yeah, and again, you know, a lot of people have participated and helped in the crane making, and yeah, like reflection wise, I don't know, my personal favorite, I think, is the piece that's behind me, Brainstorm. And yeah, like the title of this exhibition, light is a really important part of you know, my work, especially, you know, because I work with glass. Just because, you know, glass can be also, you know, transparent or opaque, and I try to use you know, a variety of techniques in glass blowing, and trying to kind of showcase what molten glass can look like as well. And light is just a really cool part to showcase glass. And so light is a really big part of my work.
Great. Thanks, Kazuki. Nikki had a question. They were wondering if you can describe the process you typically go through when moving from idea concept to the finished piece.
Sure. That's a really cool question. Yeah, when I have a spark of idea, it's usually from like a kind of like a sentimental place in my heart. And I don't often, it's not something that I encounter very frequently, but some source of inspiration, like the trip that I took to help my family member, you know, go through a tough time. That kind of stuff really is really powerful, and yeah, it almost just like kind of changed who I am going through that process. And so yeah, off of those like really powerful emotions that I've encountered, and actually some, you know, inspiration are from stories that I've heard, or stories that I've encountered from, you know, other people's mental, you know, mental well-being and stories. So it's not just mine. And I go through, you know, kind of like a chaotic process almost of just like brainstorming and thinking about different ideas and concepts, and just like you know, sketching out a lot of different forms. And from there, I select and kind of go through the process of refinement, and whether that be refining the idea or the concept, or refining the shape itself. It's about making a variety of different things that I pick from. And then I think the most important part of the process is finishing, which can be a very difficult part of, you know, when you do any task. You could have a lot of great ideas, and you could have a lot of good sketches, but you know, to finish something is it's a very it involves a lot of emotions, like worry, you know, whether you're not confident or, you know, confident about it, or you know, whether you're tired, you're, you know, rushing because you have a deadline. All of those things, I think, for me personally, I think finishing is the hardest part of the making process, which I think is also the most important part, where you make the important decisions.
Well, and I think with your chosen material of glass too, because once the glass is blown, the hot form, it has to go into, it's like a kiln. I think it's called the annealer, right? Yes. And until that thing cools, you're not even 100% sure if it's gonna live, so to speak, if my glass blowing knowledge is correct.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the glass pieces are, start out in the furnace. It's gathered out of the furnace. It's cooling down every second you're working, and you're taking reheats in the reheating chamber, and then you're working. After you're done working, you're gonna put it in the annealing oven, which will then sit, in the annealing oven overnight, or depending on how thick the glass is, maybe 2 days to cool down all the way down to room temperature. But actually, that doesn't really, that's kind of like a starting point for me with my pieces, at least. The glass components are made, those pieces that I made are then taken to my cold shop, which is also another part of the glass blowing process that not a lot of people give attention to enough. But it's the finishing part is the grinding, cutting, drilling, polishing. All those things take a tremendous amount of time. Like, for example, these bottles that are standing tall, all those pieces where I've cut in a dome, a lens on the bottom, just by holding in front of a machine for, I don't know, countless hours, and running water as well. So you're kind of on alert not to slip the pieces that you made, the precious pieces that my team has made. And so that's a really important part of the process that not a lot of people talk about, the cold working. And then combining it with different materials like casting concrete, staining concrete, sealing concrete, like putting the butterfly joint on the pedestal for the Bluebird, or talking to a friend to collaborate on a wooden shelf. All of those things are kind of like hidden parts of the process that I think pretty important as well.
And Kazuki, Nikki had another question. If there were glass artists who inspire your work or influence like your choice of techniques, and Nikki mentioned that they remember one of your exhibits used Venetian glass work, and just again, if there were certain glass artists or techniques that really influence you.
Definitely, and there's a ton of artists that inspired me, that inspires me. I think by far, Lino Tagliapietra is the maestro of glass blowing, and I believe he's 84 and still blowing glass and managing a really wonderful team of also talented artists. It's just I think he would be, if I were to choose one person, I think he would be the guy who I owe to the most. I have only met him a couple times, but he inspires me a lot.
Great. And Kazuki, I was just going to share a comment that Chris has submitted. I love the use of water, which to me represents life, and how glass is used as a method of self-reflection for water and light. The molten glass hints at a diversity of colors ready to be unveiled.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question, Chris. Yeah, the water. I love using water in my work too, and I've included water in my previous works, a couple of them, and this particular one, it kind of is like a garden, or almost like like plants that are blooming, and in some way, water is like also symbolic. we need water to survive. And, and it's just a material that, worked out really perfectly to functionally to hold these pieces upright, and, optically creates illusion. And it's just worked out really great for this, installation that almost like a flower garden. And I chose to use a spectrum of a variety of different color, and hopefully that kind of shows you what might be like to have like a mania episode, or like a hypomania episode of just bursts of energy.
Sorry, Kazuki, I'm just looking at this. And then Susan commented, very interesting work, and it reminds me more of water and light. So I think, Kazuki, I'm just going to ask if anyone else has any, I think I've kind of gotten through the questions in the chat. Does anyone else have any other questions for Kazuki? Whether you would like to drop them into the chat, or just even if anyone would like to unmute themselves, maybe to ask a question. I think hopefully maybe everyone has gotten their questions in. Kazuki, maybe I'll ask a question now that this show is up, and as you mentioned already, it was delayed about a year or so because of the pandemic. Now that the show is up and kind of, we're also just in a moment when things are starting to open back up in the larger world as well. Kind of what are you working on now, or where are your thoughts now?
Sure. I've just kind of in the, I'm actually resting. It's okay to rest. And,
yes.
Honestly, this whole going through the pandemic and kind of keeping the studio going, and I finally got everything standing up here, and we've had a bunch of people who were able to come here by appointment, and I'm just grateful for everything that everybody contributed to make this happen. And I think also an important part of being just like a functional person is you have to rest. And so I'm taking a good amount of time to rest, just because this whole thing is it took a lot of energy. And so I think that it's important to mention that the resting is also like a period where I'm kind of marinating on new ideas.
Yeah.
And so that's where things kind of get born. And I do have upcoming events lined up, which I'm so excited about. And so I'm just kind of taking care of my surrounding, myself, and then kind of resting, getting my ideas kind of sparked again. And always kind of blowing glass for making custom glass pieces at the studio. So always moving my hand, trying to stay on top of things. That's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Well, no, thank you for that, and for that wonderful, gentle reminder to not only to yourself but to all of us that yes, as much as work is a part of work, so is rest and needing those moments. Yeah. Kazuki, maybe we'll do, a lot of people are just commenting on that they really appreciated getting to know more about you and your work, and thank you for it. Maybe there was one, maybe we'll do this as the final question. And again, this is from Chris. that you mentioned that your daughter was born during the pandemic, or if I recall correctly, it was literally as everything was locking down, your daughter was born. Have you done any glass work or have a piece in mind to represent the birth experience?
Not yet, but yeah, the birth of my daughter is it's pretty life-changing experience, and so I'm sure things are kind of gonna get incorporated in different ways in my future work. Actually, the pieces that are here standing up right now is it's been made. Everything has been made. All the glass pieces, most of the glass pieces, before my daughter was born. So anything that I make from now, I hope to kind of incorporate at least inspiration from the experiences that I continue to have. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Chris.
Great. Well, Kazuki, I think we'll probably end on that note. Thank you so much. You've been such an immense pleasure and I know I'm not only speaking for myself, but all of the staff, as well as our preparator crew, who Kazuki worked very close with to install a show. It's wonderful that it's here, it's finally up. And thank you again for just all your work and for taking the time to share so much about it with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I hope that you guys were able to enjoy the show virtually. And if you do have a chance to visit physically, this show will be open till middle of September. And so I hope you get to visit in person as well. Thank you very much for everybody who participated today, and thanks to also everybody who supported me to make this exhibition come true. Really appreciate it.
Great, thanks so much, Kazuki. And just a reminder to everyone that Kazuki is based here in LA. He's been here since about 2013. Someone was asking, just to clarify that. And that also, along with the work that he exhibits in galleries and museums, he does also operate the glass studio business called KT Glassworks. And I think Kazuki, if they just look up KT Glassworks on the internet or on Instagram, they should be able to find you, I think, pretty easily.
Yes, yeah.
All right, great. And Kazuki always posts really nice videos of them working in the glass studio as well. And I do believe we'll continue to be developing programs for Kazuki and the other exhibitions that we have coming up. Andreas, before we get off, is there anything else you wanted people to know programming wise? Oh, okay. So for folks, Andres is just dropping in a couple of links regarding KT Glassworks and some other things in the chat. So again, we really appreciate all of you joining us this afternoon. For those of you who haven't had a chance to come by the museum and are based here in LA, we hope you can do that very soon. As Kazuki mentioned, the show goes through September 12th. And thanks again, everyone. And just keep a lookout through our e-blast and online about upcoming programs too.